Let's get into UFC 309 talk. As always, if you're a fan of the show, we're not going to do every fight. There's a lot of podcasts that do that kind of stuff. We're just going to focus on the most meaningful stuff. Honestly, the fights that most interest us and the fights most people probably care about on this card. Because honestly, 309 is kind of meh. It's great at the top, but the rest of the card is meh. It's mid. 308 was better. That said, the first one I want to talk about is Bo Nickel, the super prospect, the multi-time Penn State national champion wrestler, one of the most hyped prospects in MMA in a long time. He's facing Paul Craig. Huge favorite. Bo Nickel is a minus. Now, this is a few days out, but he's a minus 1,000 favorite against Paul Craig. Paul Craig beat Jamal Hill. No, he beat Jamal Hill.
He did. Dislocated his elbow.
Yeah, this guy beat a former champion. Like, Paul Craig's a good fighter. I get it. He's not a great stand-up guy, but he's a nasty grappler. What are your thoughts first? Like, give me your pick, but also just is the odds kind of crazy, or does Paul Craig just have like obvious like wrestling weaknesses? I mean, you're going against an elite wrestler. Yeah, he's probably a big underdog for a good reason.
Like I'm leaning toward Bo Nickel winning this, but I'm not very confident in that pick. No. And that being said, like these odds are wild. Like that's really wild. Like you're talking about a guy who his strength is wrestling, and he's going to get you to the floor and he's going to dominate position. He didn't look that great last time, even though he got the finish. Yeah. Cody Brundage, one of the more unheralded fighters that was on the UFC 300 card, right? Paul Craig is miles above like the caliber of fighter that Cody Brundage is. And on top of that, he is a serious jiu-jitsu player from the bottom position. Yep. That is something that we cannot take lightly at all. Now, the smart money says that Bo Nickel probably goes out there and gets the win. I would say he might have the stand-up advantage, but that being said, he's not a good stand-up fighter. Yeah. Paul Craig isn't the best stand-up fighter. This is going to be contested on the ground. It's probably going to be Bo Nickel, but I'm not throwing money at $1,000 minus 1,000 odds on Nickel. That's wild. That's disrespectful, really.
Yeah, if you're looking for like an upset pick, I think this is one. If you got a little bit of expendable cash, you want to throw it down, I think it's worth a shot, just because without a doubt, the training for MMA has come a long way, and the defenses of submission moves and stuff like that. The training overall all over the place is great. Bo Nickel's at a great camp, but I mean, that's the thing. He still only has 6 fights. I get it. He's an elite wrestler, but that's what makes jiu-jitsu so interesting. Like the little tricks and the little things, and you think you got somebody in a bad spot and you really don't. And like that, it takes a while to understand and avoid that stuff and stay in safe spots and not make little mistakes. And if you get a little tired, it's surprising. Bo probably should win the fight. He's a better athlete too. I think that's always been kind of Paul Craig's problem. Super tough, great jiu-jitsu guy, but he doesn't have like that next level athleticism to compete with the best of the best of the weight class. So he's a live dog to me. I still think Bo should win, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe it is a thing. Maybe we find out, Nickel has been working a lot more in striking. We've seen for a long time wrestlers have a better chance, I think, of becoming decent strikers because wrestling bakes in like that man strike. Nothing to say that jiu-jitsu doesn't have that, but there's just something about wrestling that breeds a strong individual. And if you can teach them just to throw a good, overhand and a hook, they can lay some leather on you. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Bo Nickel maybe gets a knockdown or something like that, and that's where he kind of finishes it and maybe gets a TKO. But yeah, I'm seeing that too. Surprising odds. I agree with you 1,000%. Weird odds. Going in from there, this fight is supposed to be on the main card. I don't get it. It just adds to the weird narrative of like how Dana's talking so much junk about a guy like Francis Ngannou. I was going to cut him after 2 fights. Like this guy, how he's still hanging around. No disrespect, but Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. I mean, this should be like the beginning of the prelims to me. No disrespect again. I know Chris Weidman's from a New York guy. All love and all respect, but Eric Anders hasn't been relevant in a while. Chris Weidman has lost a ton of fights. Like, I'm going to ask this question instead of who's going to win first. Why should we even care about this fight, Anthony?
We shouldn't, but it's like we really should. But I will say that this feels appropriate for Chris Weidman at this stage of his career. Yeah. This is the right sort of fight that he should be in, minus the lack of name value on the other end of the octagon there. Eric Anders is similarly sort of a well past his prime middleweight, and it makes sense that they meet each other right now. So I guess there's that. But other than that, I don't see the point of this other than Chris Weidman being a New York native fighting in Madison Square Garden, a place that has been highly unkind to him in his past. So he's probably still having flashbacks to Romero kneeing his head into oblivion. Like Chris Weidman has not done well in New York.
Did the Uriah Hall leg break happen there too?
I remember Gastelum knocked him out. Or Gastelum knocked him down in like Buffalo or something, or Utica or somewhere. Like it wasn't Madison Square Garden. But let me see that.
Uriah Hall. That fight was on the Usman Masvidal 2 card. I think that was like in Orlando or something like that. I want to say
that was Miami. Yeah,
Jacksonville.
That fight was in Miami, or
it was in the ViStar. Yeah, in the ViStar, and then. Yeah. So Gastelum, he actually did beat Gastelum. Let's see, where was that?
Yeah, he beat Gastelum, but he got knocked down like really bad in the first moments of that fight.
It was in his backyard, Nassau Coliseum in Long Island.
Yeah. So this is not like I don't care about this fight. I really don't. Like, and with all due respect to Chris Weidman and the legacy that he has forged for himself, that was quite some time ago. We need to be past the Chris Weidman UFC days. Chris Weidman as an active fighter, period. And I know he picked up a win in his last fight. Sorry, still can unsee him getting his skull dislodged so many times before that.
Like this really should be a loser leaves town match. Like the loser should just really walk from away from sport, especially Weidman. What's crazy is that, I'll throw my pick out there. I guess Weidman will maybe win a decision and he'll be in danger, but he probably should win this even at 40 just because Eric Anders is a nice fighter, but he was the guy that like a Brendan Schaub, great athlete because he's got the football background, but he's even beyond that athlete and he's not a great technical guy. So I'll go with Weidman, but God, you know what I'd rather see, just because he's on the undercard and doing the same tri-state area local thing, but I'd rather see Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson than this fight. At least Jim Miller is interesting, it's fun. Damon Jackson is a great grappler. If they get to the ground, that's probably going to be really fun. I'd rather see that than Chris Weidman, which says a lot about Chris Weidman right now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this fight with Weidman and Anders is it's a good style matchup for Weidman, for sure. Yeah, that's a very favorable style matchup, and I'm sure that was something taken into consideration that he's fighting at MSG, and they want to give him a New York win. But Miller versus Jackson just feels like a better time to me.
Yeah.
Damon Jackson is perpetually in these wild fights. Jim Miller is a beloved mainstay. It just makes more sense to me to have that elevated. So I don't get it.
Moving on from this, as important as the main event is, and it's the historical relevancy and stuff like that. Honestly, I'm probably more excited about this fight, mainly because I'm a Charles Oliveira fan. I think we could both agree we're kind of big Bronx fans
definitely.
Here. And even though this is a rematch, I'm more excited for Charles versus Chandler. I mean, I'm actually not that I'm going to say I'm a Michael Chandler fan, but I'm actually happy for him that he's fighting. He's making some money because McGregor in the UFC effed him over so bad. He wasted 2 good last years of his career. Like he's coming back at such an advanced age. I mean, it's such a shame. I'm glad to see him just get back in the octagon and fight. First question, along with your pick, is there any reason to think Michael Chandler can win this time? He lost the last time. It was a good fight. He knocked Oliveira down. We all thought, oh crap, like this guy's going to be Bellator champ. He's going to be UFC champ. He's going to make history. Didn't happen from Oliveira. We all saw his vaunted ability to recover in that fight. He got himself back together. The next round, he hurt Chandler. He beats him, like that. Is there any reason Chandler can do anything different and win this time? Has maybe Oliveira slipped a little bit? Maybe age is catching up on him. Does he have a better chance? Or this should maybe even be shorter this time for Oliveira?
I mean, I don't think that Chandler's going to get his hand raised at the end of the day, but he does have some advantages coming into it despite this long layoff. One of those advantages on a long layoff is that you haven't been getting punched in the head during that time. Since they fought, Oliveira's got his head dinged around a couple times, most notably by Islam Makhachev.
Yep.
So there is extra damage and extra wear and tear that Oliveira's got to have in that octagon that Chandler does not. And Chandler is someone who desperately needed some level of time off, considering the frequent amount of brain rattlings he's received throughout his entire career. So hopefully for his sake, he's refreshed, he's rejuvenated, and he's also somebody who's a consistent workhorse in the gym. Yeah. This isn't a guy who, when he's not fighting, that he's sitting around eating bonbons.
Yeah, he thought he did have a fight, so at least he had something there.
Yeah, so he was constantly in and out of camps, and even when he's not in camp, he stays in shape and he stays training. So it's not like he's been sitting on the couch eating Twinkies. This guy has been in the gym and like fighting for civil rights, and and just training and getting himself ready. So I think Michael Chandler will be the best version of a guy who's had this long layoff that you can picture, but still you're fighting Du Bronx.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I think there's enough evidence now that ring rust can be beaten, and you nailed it. If you're in the gym, you're constantly training, that's a way to get around ring rust and these long lamps, stuff like that. I think if we're looking at like key fights, I think this one hasn't just an outside chance of like upset special and stuff like that, because just looking at Charles Oliveira, it blows my mind, but it makes sense why he has so many records. This guy has 44 fights. 44 fights, like that catches up with people. It just happens, and it happens suddenly, and it sometimes happens viciously. I think that helps Michael Chandler a lot, just because they were said, if we saw with like Dan Henderson, power is the last thing that kind of goes. He's not going to be as explosive. His reflexes aren't going to be the same. But if Charles has just been, like you said, dinged around enough, he's got 44 fights, like one good pop. And we already saw it. He's already did it to Charles. Like maybe this time he gets it with the one that really it's harder for Charles to recover from. I still think Charles will win. I think it'll probably be a good fight. Maybe it'll go 3 rounds. Maybe go all the way to a decision. Maybe Chandler, he says, you know what? I have wrestling. Maybe he tries to wrestle a little bit more just to mix things up. That's a big risk with Charles too. But maybe he just mixes up. He comes with a smarter game plan, because just watch a couple of days ago, watching him versus Justin Gaethje and some of his fights, like he hasn't necessarily been a smart fighter in the UFC, but he's been highly entertaining. Maybe he comes with a smarter game plan, maybe surprises. So I'm still going to go with Charles in that fight. You got Charles. What do you think? Is decision, submission, finish?
I think he gets him by submission, set up by strikes. That's the way I'm seeing this. Either way, even if Chandler gets his hand raised, this is not going to decision. I'd be very surprised if the judges aren't safe just taking a bathroom break the whole time.
Yeah, and Charles has a lot to fight for. It's not like he lost and he's out of decision from the guy who's probably going to get the title shot. Like not to say that Michael Chandler win over him is something that catapults into a title spot, but a definitive win kind of keeps him in range and maybe getting a title fight and stuff like that too. He's always ready. He's just one of the best lightweights ever. Moving on from there, main event. This one, I don't see any reason why there's going to be an upset special as much as I'd like to see Stipe surprise people. And just going back, I mean, we talked about in the past a little bit, like just to refresh fans who are watching this of the sport. Stipe is coming into this fight. He just turned 42 years old. He's fought, since 2018, wait for it, 2 times. He beat Francis the first time, lost to Dan Cormier. Since 2018, this guy has fought 3 times. Since 2021, in March, where he lost to Francis, he hasn't fought at all. It's been over 3 years since he's fought. In the last 5 years, he's fought 3 times. I get it. It's different for heavyweight. You can be older. Yeah, we can maybe make the same case with him with Chandler. Maybe he's healed up. Maybe he's a little better. But Anthony, explain to me why, for the Stipe fans out there and people that just don't like John and they're hoping for a knockout, why is there hope that Stipe can surprise? I mean, this is the guy that beat Cormier. Let's not take that away. Beat Cormier, tons of great fighters at heavyweight. If anyone can do it, he can. But why would he be able to at 42, 3 years away?
Well, I mean, one thing that we saw in the Cormier fights is Stipe has a good ability to adjust in the middle of the fight.
That's true.
In the second fight and for a little bit of the early portions of the third fight, DC was giving him some work. Like it looked like it was going to be a repeat of the first time. And the first time, it almost made the first time feel kind of flukish. It was like, maybe he hadn't fully healed from the first Ngannou fight and DC just caught him at the right time. Watching those last 2 fights made you kind of think that a little bit. Yeah. DC came in with a great game plan that second and third time, but Stipe just figured out what he needed to do in the middle of the fight. Like he dragged him into the sort of dogfight that he needed to pull out the victory, adjusted to the body shots, and that spelled the end. I think he has the fight IQ to make those adjustments this time. And also it depends on what type of John Jones we see. We've seen John Jones go in there with Anthony Smith and come very close to losing by disqualification. We've seen, him go in there and play a Muay Thai game with Thiago Santos for whatever reason and walk away with a split decision there. If he comes in with some sort of half-baked playing, around sort of attempt, it could spell disaster. It could set up Stipe to do something to him. And keep in mind, Stipe is one of the better boxers that we've seen at heavyweight in quite some time. Before he was in the UFC, he was Golden Gloves champ. So this is a guy who knows what to do in the ring. John Jones has never been the sharpest of stand-up strikers. Like, he's had moments and he's able to make things happen. But from just pure technique, not always the best, especially when it comes to the hands. Stipe has a shot if you want to look at it that way, if you're being generous. Very generous.
Yeah, let me look at it. I just want to double check on these stats here. And Tapology is great with this. I want to check out on the reach here for John. And John is a 84.
John is an 84 inch.
Yeah, he's got crazy. And then Stipe has 80. So, because I just wanted to bring up the fact that, because I want to build a case along with you why Stipe has a chance, because Stipe is the same height. He's got the 4-inch reach, but we've seen in the past, if you can be the same size as close to John, like John has a little bit more difficulty where he can't just dominate with his range and his length. He can struggle a little bit. We've seen it quite a few times. So that should help with Stipe. I think the thing that, along with what you said, boxing, that gives me hope, and that's what separates the greats from the good fighters, is IQ. And even though people want to talk stuff about Stipe, how he talks and how he does things, and he sounds like a lunkhead, the guy's a smart fighter. He knows what to do, and he has a smart camp. Like, they prepare him very well. They have good game plans. So I'm fascinated to see how they come out with that. And then the fact that this is not, Stipe, not to say that he's fought a ton of wrestlers, but again, going back to IQ, like, I don't think he's going to be an easy takedown. He's still dangerous. And this is a guy that hits hard and is durable. That he's not going to get rattled and make poor decisions when he's hurt. Like, he's been there in the fire with the best of the best in that division. That said, I think John just has too many tools. Even with the weight on him, he's motivated. He's still too dangerous. If he would have got Stipe at like 38, man, that's an interesting fight. Yes. Yeah. But he's getting Stipe, 42 is 42. Even if you have time away to heal up, you still, your age is a thing. So I'm going to say John TKO round 2. How are you seeing? How do you think this guy's?
That sounds about right. I'll give it a round 2 TKO as well. Like, one thing that we got to be worried about for Stipe is that John Jones has fought at heavyweight now. Like, he's, when he fought Cyril Gane, it looked like a light heavyweight that ate a few extra burgers and stepped in there.
Yeah.
I don't know what Jones. I haven't watched any of the pre-fight content and the embeddeds and the vlogs and all. So I haven't looked at any of that stuff yet. But if John Jones is training the way he should right now, he's probably physique-wise is going to look different. He's going to be more settled into that weight, and that's a very, very strong person already. That could spell a nightmare for Stipe. So, I mean, I don't think this is going to be a good night for him.